CRG have been updating us, or particularly one dev has been updating us on the Global Illumination stuff that they're doing. There's been some updates from Ben Parry. He is the guy. He is this guy. He updated us in 2023 when he came on stage and showed us the first kind of look at what they were doing for Global Illumination, their ray trace version. And then also we had an update in 2024 at CitizenCon where he came on stage and showed us, again, an update of where things are at, all these nice things that you've probably seen played over and over again. So he's the guy, and he's been basically on Spectrum, and he's been answering people's questions. So somebody asked him, AMD GI 1.2. Now that doesn't make sense to probably a lot of you, but we'll make that make sense in a minute. The future GI implementation in Star Citizens comes from this AMD SDK, right? The multi-bounce indirect rendering is a great improvement for Star Citizen in this case, or is it not really useful? So my understanding of this is CIG are using this effectively. The way to put it is, well, we've asked Gemini, and it basically says GI 1.0 is an open source real-time global illumination rendering technique developed by AMD for use in video games and other graphics applications. So AMD put out this paper and a load of stuff basically saying, here's our solution for global illumination. And they made a presentation about this. We'll probably link all this underneath. And they basically went through how it all works. This is not for you and me, people who play games. This really is for people who make games. And so they have gone through, explained all this, and CIG effectively have chosen to base their global illumination stuff off of this. So they're building on top of this. This is all open source, I believe. And so CIG effectively are building on top of this. That is the short version. Is this new version? So there's a new version of AMD's GI 1.2. See if we can find that. Is that here? Yeah. So they've done an update with new multi-bounce. So this is AMD introducing AMD GI 1.2 multi-bounce. Basically, the question here is asking, can we not just integrate all this? Can we not just move straight to GI 1.2? But effectively, CIG has built off GI 1.0, is my understanding, and they can't then just integrate this fully. They can't just click a switch and then this is now in Star Engine. But this has got new multi-bounce features. Basically, the ray tracing looks better. The way light bounces, all sorts of stuff, blah, blah, blah. Probably too technical for us here, but that's it. And basically, Ben says, we've already got a multi-bounce solution that we developed internally, but as I'm not 100% happy with the results, I'm interested to see what the original authors did with it. I have a question because I'm really looking forward to it and I don't know much. Would it be better for CIG to use this AMD version? So whenever they do new updates like this 1.0 in the future, you'll be able to implement more easily than having to improve your own version. So basically they're saying, why don't you just stick to the stock AMD version? And then Ben gives this answer, which is very interesting. While it can sound appealing to just use the sample version unmodified, so AMD's version, there are definitely trade-offs that they've made that affect things like responsiveness and stability that we wouldn't have been able to change easily, as well as errors in their code that we've fixed. On top of that, there's quite a lot of stuff that's game dependent, so specific to Star Citizen. For instance, we want the surface lighting calculation to work similarly to the main lighting bus, so we have to have our own shader there so it can read shadows, mask out lights by area, etc. The short, easy version of is not as simple as just using their version and just chucking it into SC. It won't work as straightforward as that. There'll be edge cases and things in Star Citizen that require them to do work. So in some ways, they might as well just do it on their own. Finally, there's a performance aspect. We're in the optimization phase now. So that's interesting from an update point of view. They're in the optimization phase now. And I'm chopping and rewriting all sorts of things to try and get the frame time down. That's a lot easier when it's all CIG code and we've moved passes around merge or split shaders, change internal formats, and so on. So a load of stuff. Effectively, from a performance side of things, it's much easier for them to be writing their own code rather than just using the stock, or how he puts it, the sample version, unmodified. So that's what he's saying. So what's interesting about this is that they're in the optimization phase. He does go on to talk about Squadron 42, but we'll get to that in a minute. But this in some ways is a bit of a Squadron 42 update about where they're at in terms of getting this into Squadron. This person asked, this is a good question, in terms of percentage, how far would you say you are done towards what you would call complete optimization? So basically, how close is it to being finished? And Ben says, I couldn't give a percentage yet. In terms of performance, we're past the big algorithmic improvements and into the painful profiling and squeezing stage, but it's still quite expensive. So the ray trace global the ray trace global illumination is still quite expensive. So I'm looking for more options. For memory usage, there are still some big savings in the pipeline. After that, I need to more thoroughly profile on a wider range of machines to both check that the optimizations hold up there and to fine-tune the parameters to get the best bang for buck. Well, Ben, I'll help you with that. Send me over some work and we'll profile on a wider range of machines. I will happily do that for you. He couldn't give a percentage, but it's basically about getting the cost of the ray tracing down. Now, ray tracing obviously is fairly expensive in every game, some more than others, but there'll be targets that they're trying to hit, I'm sure. Arty seems to be a joke, in my opinion. Honest opinion, if I have to toggle on and off with the screenshots to even notice the difference, it seems useless waste of resources. Well, you say that. Okay, let's tackle that quickly. This is why they're doing it. Let's play this, because that's a fair question. From a visual point of view, maybe you're looking at it thinking, I can't really. So when they do these sorts of comparisons, you're thinking, does that make much difference? I would argue maybe it does. I think in some of these cases, this one especially, I think there is a fairly big difference here. This isn't like you can definitely notice this. Like, that's a huge difference. The bounce of lighting, blah blah blah. But I think he says it at the start of this one. He says why they're doing it, and even if you hate the idea of ray tracing, this is why CIG themselves are going for this.
Now, we've seen already automated systems for automatically placing different biomes, different vegetation, settlements, and people. So now we're going to take the same approach to automatically handling light itself. First of all, why is this important? Well, it's not always obvious, especially when they do their jobs as well as they do. But there's an incredible amount of attention from the lighting artists that goes into all of the locations that we have in the game. Besides just marking up the reflection probe areas, they also manage the visuals really carefully, adding fill lights, approximating bounce lights off ground and up into ceilings and dark corners where there aren't any direct lights pointing, really. And the problem is, not only does this take a lot of time and really constrain the style that they're using, it's simply not possible. If you've got a planet full of forests and, 3,000 and something placed locations, you're going to be exploring places that no artist has ever visited. No, they've not looked at, and they're certainly not going to be able to have tweaked it for you.
So the argument is the scale of the game is so huge, they can't possibly have artists go around everywhere and manually light every location. It's impossible. Yes, you might hate the concept of ray tracing in other games. You might think, it's going to be terrible for performance, blah, blah, blah. CIG are basically arguing they haven't really got a choice. They have to find a solution that they can just turn on and it will light massive parts of the game without them ever visiting it. Here we go. This is the key probably piece of information in this whole bit. So this person asked, do you think we're likely to see CIG's version of GI maybe in the first half of 2026? This person has broken the rules. He never asked dates, but I'm glad he did. So here is the big update. Currently, my main priority is to get this performant enough for Squadron 42 and hammer out any edge cases and bugs that come up there. So that, as we know, the key for Star Citizen and for CIG, is Squadron 42, has been for the last few years. And the priority with all this ray tracing stuff is to get it in for Squadron. We could make guesses about how close Squadron is based on this, the fact that he's optimizing this. But like he said earlier, we have no idea what he probably has no idea when he'll be finished. And so we could never guess. Like, there's probably a fair amount of work still to go to optimize it so it's good enough for Squadron. And so there's no point us predicting when Squadron will come based on this. The only thing I think we could probably say is that it sounds as though he's still in the weeds of it. And it's so the idea that Squadron would come early in 2026, like January, for instance, which I think nobody really believes, that's still not going to happen. That I think, again, this almost confirms that a really early release of Squadron in 2026 probably isn't happening because they're still working on quite a core, the lighting system is quite a core thing of the game. So the main priority is to get this performant enough for Squadron and hammer out any edge cases and bugs that come up there. We try to avoid making predictions on how long tech will take to merge into the release branch, but we'll also need to thoroughly test it in the PU and look for problems that it causes in a less constrained environment. So obviously Squadron is very controlled. They probably know what you're going to do in each level. They probably can control where you're going to go. And the lighting is much more predictable. Whereas in the PU, to just chuck in Global Illumination it's like he says, is a less constrained environment. Anything can happen from a lighting point of view. So they'll need to thoroughly test it, like he says. I would like to see it in a tech preview release if we do another of those. I hope we do another of those, as you're all much better at breaking things. But at the moment, support requests for the persistent universe would pull me away from Squadron's needs. So again, Squadron's needs are the priority for the project. He's working on it. He's working on optimization. He wants to test it with a variety of different machines to check optimizations and to fine-tune parameters. There you go. The latest update from CIG on Global Illumination. Ray Trace Global Illumination, I should say.